there, my name's Laura DiPolito, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker working for Schenectady City School District. This video is for our transportation staff that work with our children on the bus, getting them to and from school safely every day. The goals of this video are to have you leave here feeling confident that you have 2 or 3 extra strategies to manage a difficult behavior, but also to increase the likelihood that you understand these behaviors and can respond with safety and compassion, both for the kiddo and yourself. So, as I said, my name is Laura. I am one of the TCI trainers for the district. We teach people how to de-escalate children all day long in a 5-day course. This is going to be a little tiny snippet of important information from that course. If you're interested in more information, reach out to your supervisor and ask about further training in TCIS. So I want to start by thanking you. Thank you for accepting the job of transporting our kids and being on the bus with our kids to and from school every day. We all know that the school bus is a rolling classroom, and it's an important classroom. It's a place where kiddos maybe aren't learning reading and math, but they're learning social skills. They're learning how to express themselves to their friends. They're learning how to set limits. They're learning how to cope with difficult emotions right in the middle of traffic, in the middle of neighborhoods, in the middle of lots of noise and things going on around them. I always have thought of the school bus as one of our more important classrooms as a social worker, because if you can master the school bus, you can really master life. Why is the school bus so challenging for so many kiddos? Well, let's just talk about the fact that you're a teacher on that school bus, so you know, right? If this is a school bus in a classroom, that some of us aren't morning people and some of us aren't afternoon people, and that's when you're getting to see the kids. First thing in the morning, when you don't know what's happened in the morning for them, or some of them aren't morning people, or they're hungry, or it's cold, or they just don't feel good until noon. And then you're seeing some kids in the afternoon who've had a hard day, who might be tired and might feel exhausted, even if they had a great day at school, by the prospect of riding the bus. The bus is a sensory experience too. It's loud sometimes. It has different smells on it than other places we go. We see different things on the bus. We're driving by and we get to see neighborhoods and people maybe we know, or houses we've lived in and memories we might have at those places. We also sometimes have to acknowledge our kiddos are hungry on the bus, and we know that they can't have food on the bus. And it's a time of day when kids often are hungry, morning and afternoon, and they have to wait. So there's that sensory experience too. It can be overwhelming for grown-ups to ride the bus, much less children. And we're taking them on a bus to learn and then back home. And we want to kind of start by acknowledging that that part of the day in and of itself is what we would call a setting condition. It might be a time when a more challenging behavior is more or less likely to occur. It might be more likely because of the setting of the bus, the time of the day, the hungry tummies, the fatigue, and it's when they're separating often from their primary caregivers and going into school or coming home sometimes. And we don't always know what's happening in children's lives, right? We can't assume that their experience is just like ours. So we don't know what their morning was like. We don't know how they feel about leaving the house or coming home. These can all be setting conditions to make a behavior more or less likely to occur. Children don't often use language as much as adults do to express themselves. Behavior usually is the beginning of expression of emotion for kiddos, especially littler kids, but even our bigger kids will show us how they feel rather than tell us how they feel. That might look like a behavior. That might look like sulking or internalized behavior. It might look like a hoodie up and eyes down, or it might look like aggression and fighting or kicking. And those are ways people are communicating. That's what the behavior is there to tell you. They're communicating they're uncomfortable. They're communicating things aren't going the way they want. And rather than seeing this behavior as an attack or something that they're doing to hurt you, I want you to try to imagine that when children are exhibiting these behaviors reflect their experiences with the world and their own internal states, their own feelings. They may have had a fight with their sibling in the morning over getting to use the last bit of the Pop-Tarts. They might have had a conflict with mom or dad. They didn't want to get up. Or they might have heard a conflict in the house or in the apartment next door, and that might be rumbling around in their heads too. Imagine not having the words to talk about it, or not knowing if you should even talk about it, but having all those big, uncomfortable feelings. That's the function of these behaviors that come out, is the kiddos are walking around with these big, uncomfortable feelings. So when you see a kiddo come in and they're having a behavior that isn't a sunny, hey, good morning, it's probably that they're having a big feeling. What you want to do about it is what we're going to talk about next in the video. And the first thing I want you to do when you're noticing some behaviors, that these are kids suffering and you're thinking of them as, oh, they're having a hard time, is first check in with yourself. And by checking in with yourself, I ask you to think, how are you feeling today? Do you feel bright and sunny in the morning? Do you feel capable of handling big, tough, uncomfortable emotions today? Are you a morning person? I know I am. As I've gotten older, I've become more of a morning person, much to my children's horror. But if you're not a morning person and you're riding the bus in the morning and you're kind of in a grumpy mood and a kid is in kind of a grumpy mood, that can be a setup, right? A setting condition for some behavior. So knowing that your mood impacts all of the children around you, whether you're communicating it or not, children feel it. It's like mist that comes out. And they can sense your feelings. And if you're having a hard time, kind of noticing that and thinking about it, and checking yourself too. I remind myself sometimes like, okay, I'm going to think about that later. Everyone has stuff in life, and being able to say, right now, I can't think about that. I need to go to work. I need to be able to put that away. But being aware that maybe I'm not my best self today. And that's going to caution you when you interact with kids who are having pain and who are showing us their pain through behavior, right? The second thing I want you to do when you see a kid having a pain-based behavior, they're swearing, they're running away, they're spitting, they're saying mean things, and you're thinking this kid's in pain. Your first question was, how are you doing? Your second question is, what does this kiddo want, feel, or need? This is really important to think about because remember what I told you a few minutes ago, that behavior tells us that there's an unmet need. Kids don't always tell us what their needs are. They'll show us though. Our goal eventually in the rolling classroom and our classrooms back on campus are eventually for everyone to use their words. And I'm going to count on you as an educator to kind of try to figure out, because you are an educator on the bus, figure out what does this kiddo want, feel, or need? What are they saying they need? Sometimes they tell us what they need. Leave me alone. They need space. Leave them alone. It's okay to believe them. What if a kid says, I just don't want to go to school today? No, it sounds like you don't want to go to school today. Maybe feeling heard by you and acknowledging what they need. Oh, it sounds like you're going to really miss your mom. In my case, I really miss my dog every day. It's hard. When you get home, what will you do with your mom? And kind of redirecting kids to feeling more positive. But just acknowledging and hearing what they want, feel, or need. Then you can also look at the environment. Some kiddos are really bothered by the noise of the bus. What can you do as an adult on the bus to try to help them with the sensory experience of the bus? What can we do? Some people put radios on, but I'm going to be honest, while we like the music, not all the kids on the bus always like the music. So being aware that some kids need to have earmuffs or headphones because they don't like the music. Being aware that some kids need more space than others from other people to feel safe and comfortable. So that would be what you would first ask yourself. How are you doing? You're going to check in. What does the child want, feel, or need? And the third is what's going on in this environment that may or may not be causing some of this child to experience their pain this way. Okay? Now, as the educator on the bus, you're looking up and down the aisles. You're noticing maybe more than one kiddo. And you've asked yourself these questions. You've got a good sense of what's going on the bus. Let's talk next about what strategies really work to help with kids. And the first thing I want to talk about is relationships. Relationships really help with kids. They help with all of us, by the way. But I know if I really like someone and I feel like they really like me, they're not messing with me, they really like me, they can't fake it. If I know that, I'm more likely to look forward to seeing them. And I'm more likely to want to spend time with them and also not take out things on them. So an example of this I'll give you as an adult is I take a workout class on a bicycle. And if I walk into my spin class and it's a substitute and I don't have a relationship with that person, I just turn around and leave. I'm a 50-year-old with an attitude, right? But I know myself that without that relationship, I'm not going to be inspired to exercise. It's the same way with you and the kids in the bus. So how do you build relationships with kids? The first is authentically noticing things you like about them. Authentically. It means you can't make it up. You have to be real. You have to say, I like those kicks if you really like those kicks. If you think they're ugly shoes, don't say that. If when you're picking the child up, you notice that they have a dog and you have a dog, you could share it. Hey, did you know I have a dog too? Some children wear clothing with sports information on them that tell you what sports they like or what sports their parents like. Ask them. They may or may not want to tell you, but if they do, you can also share small things about yourself that the children then experience you as more human. So, for example, you don't want to tell them about problems maybe that you're having in your life. You want to have good boundaries around that. But you do want to tell them if you like sports, what sports teams do you like? If you like pizza, what do you eat on your pizza? If you like music, what do you listen to? If you have a dog, in my case, I have two, what their names are and what I like to do with them. And you'll see that kids will connect with you over these kinds of little things that make you more human, and then they'll tell you things about them that are more human as well. And so you can use that later on if the child is having a behavioral concern. You can also use it to avoid a behavioral concern by just having that relationship, by having caring gestures when the kid comes on in the morning, they're having a hard day, and you know that child's not a morning person. A high five is enough. You don't always have to say anything or even a nod, right? But another kid who might be a morning person when they get on the bus, you might say, hey, it's good to see you, right? You're going to change what you do based on what that child wants, feels, and needs. And also on that relationship you have built. Another skill that you have that you can use then, if you have a relationship with a child, is thinking about proximity or how close you get to a child or how far you get from a child. This is a place where I want you to think a little bit about how you experience space and how much space you need. Are you a person that likes people close to you? Are you a person that likes people a little bit further from you? Have you ever thought about that? Some of our children have experienced traumatic events, and that makes them more likely to maybe want more space. They might feel unsafe if you get too close. Some of our children need to have your physical presence nearby on the bus to feel safe. You're going to have to build it on relationship and figure out what makes a kiddo seem more comfortable or less comfortable. But proximity, how near or far you are from a child, very important to think about, especially in a social group when children are having a hard time. If you are feeling protective of a child who might be experiencing a bad moment on the bus and you don't want the other children to be nearby, that might be a good time to have proximity with your back to the child you're feeling protective of and facing the other children smiling, trying to kind of just buffer for them, okay? But proximity can also motivate really good behavior. Think about when you were a student, if the teacher came over and stood behind you while you were doing your work. If you were chatting with your friend a minute before that, you're going to stop chatting. That's what proximity can do. It can help people straighten up and fly right, and it can also comfort them and help them feel at ease. Another strategy I want to talk with you about is your tone of voice. I tend to be kind of smiley, as you've probably noticed in this video, and I try to have a pretty positive tone of voice when I'm talking with kids. When children are misbehaving, I try very, very, very hard not to sound angry, because anger can be a trigger for a lot of our kids. I try instead to give a directive statement, like, please sit down, in a firm but friendly way. Firm but friendly is important because if children have experienced adults yelling at them as part of an abusive dynamic, they might fear you, and we don't want that. We don't want to trigger them or have them fear you. The other thing is even if a child is yelling at you in an abusive way, if you model being firm but friendly back, they will see a number of things. You aren't getting rattled. You aren't willing to engage in a power struggle with them, and you're going to be fair. Not only is the child you're interacting with experiencing you in that way, so is everybody else on the bus. And that's definitely the attitude you want the children to have about you. You want them to think of you as firm but friendly. So tone of voice is really important. Saving yelling and those directive statements for dangerous situations, super important. If you yell at children all the time, it will start to sound like this. Wah, 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 wah. Have you ever seen the old Snoopy Peanuts commercials and cartoons? And when the adults talk, the kids don't even hear it. It just sounds like that going across the screen. But if you never yell or you rarely yell, and then one time you have to yell and say something like, sit down, it's going to grab everyone's attention. And it will be more impactful in a positive way than if you're yelling all the time. Make sense? Same with giving directive statements. I try really hard to ask kids and to be polite with kids at all times and treat them the way I want to be treated, even if they're not treating me the way I want to be treated. Maybe even more so if they're not treating me the way I want to be treated, because I want to model for them what I'm looking for. We know that kids give us what we give to them, so that's really important. Same thing with my facial expression. I very rarely just sit and relax my face when I'm working with children. I remember how important my eyebrows are to look up and to be smiling, and again, to be authentically trying to be a welcoming presence to children in case they need help. I want them to know I'm the adult that they can come to. Now, the best tool for helping a child when they're having a hard time is actually empathy. Empathy is the act of listening in a way that reflects back to the child that you're hearing him or her and letting them know that you hear and see them and you care about them. It doesn't involve telling them what to do. It doesn't involve giving advice. It doesn't involve shaming them or reminding them of rules. It literally is listening to a child who might be having an ugly moment, screaming, yelling, threatening, and coming back to them with, wow, you're really upset right now, and waiting. When you really listen to someone, you are giving them an emotional hug. You're reassuring them. I see you. I hear you. I care about you. When people are upset, they can't think clearly. They are not going to make good decisions. Talking a lot in that moment is not going to be effective. So what I would ask is, if you're seeing a child who's really escalated and really not able to calm down and really emotional, remember that they can't think clearly at that moment. So don't talk them down. Just reflect what you see. You're really angry. You feel really hurt. What do you see the child showing you? Tell them the feeling you see. Sometimes when you do this, even though you're pretty sure the child is angry, they're going to come back at you and be angry with you. That's okay. Right now, it's not about you. Empathic listening is about the child and acknowledging where they're at and how they're feeling. And they may not have the skill yet to do that, but your being present and listening to them will most likely de-escalate them. My example of this in your personal life is if you're really, really, really angry at your significant other, and instead of arguing back with you, they just say, oh, wow, you're really upset. I can see you're really angry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you're feeling that way. It's hard to stay mad, even if you want to. Okay, so I think we've gone through all of what I wanted to talk with you about today, and it's almost been 20 minutes. I want to thank you again for taking such good care of our children in Schenectady. Taking care of yourself so that you can be emotionally present for them, being aware of your emotions, and using our strategies of listening to kids, how close or far we get to kids, building relationships with kids, showing them that we care by showing an interest in them, and also remembering our tone of voice and not being one of those shouty adults, but instead being firm but friendly. I hope these strategies help you have a safer year. We want you to have a safe school bus year. And the school bus, again, is our rolling classroom. You're our most important educators on those buses. So thank you for taking on this challenge and for loving our kiddos. Take care, and we'll see you next year. Hi again, it's me, Laura. I forgot to tell you something really important. Never go it alone when you're having a hard time with a kid. Always feel like you can reach out to us and report what's happening to us, to the school district. There are these things, they're paper and pencil, they're called referrals, paper and pencil referrals. You can write up what happened on a piece of paper. Make sure that you give it to the transportation department, but also that you give a copy to the principal of the building that the child attends. That's really important because an important piece of taking care of kids is taking care of all of us together, and we're a team. There's no I in team. So if you get stuck, know that that referral process is always there for you too. Take care. I believe in you. See you soon.